I'm Diane Wachman. I have lived in Mosman. I was born in Mosman, actually, in Cross Street in Mosman, and I have lived up to when I married in '56 and went to live in London for 20 years, came back, and of course came back to Mosman.
My name is Kenneth Dryland. I did live in Mosman for many years, 40 odd years, and took on the job of festival director. Then I moved away to the country where I now live in Orange. But Mosman is a unique place, being a municipality in a peninsula in the harbour and surrounded by water, which is very beautiful, and it has such a history. And the idea of the Festival of Mosman was motored in 1980 by Doug Miller, who was chairman, and he was a local shop owner, and he was a baker, and had a wonderful bakery shop, the first one I think in Mosman at that time. And the inaugural festival came into fruition in 1981 under my direction. I was asked to do it. And then subsequent festivals followed, and we suggested doing it like an arts festival. And I had just come back from Adelaide. I'd been to the Arts Festival in Adelaide, which was very exciting. And I met a lot of people in Adelaide who were connected with their festival. So we did a lot of talking and probing and found out a lot about it. So I came back with all those ideas, and I said to Doug at that stage in the committee, this is what we should do. And they said, fantastic, okay, we'll do it next month. I said, no way. 1 year, because if you want me to do it, I'm not going to do it in that time space, you know.
Because the same time that Kenneth was on the Chamber of Commerce, I had a business in Mosman with two partners, and I was asked to go on the Chamber of Commerce, and no idea what I was in for. But anyway, it was a wonderful experience. And so I did join the Chamber of Commerce. And I remember that meeting very well, that first one with Doug Miller. And then Kenneth, then sort of Kenneth was taken aside, I think, by Doug Miller at the end of the meeting. And that was when he was asked to take over for the festival. And so that was fine. And then Kenneth mentioned to me, I think you asked me if I'd go on to the committee. And so I said yes, and that's where it all started.
Accoutrement, when it had just started, which has been going for a long time, and it was David Prentice, I'm sure it was David. And he had been in advertising and things, and they had had a small promotion, something like Come to Mosman or Shop in Mosman or something like that, you know. And he was on the chamber at that stage, and this is how it sort of became bigger, exploded, you know. And when I said about doing it as a festival as such, rather than just a weekend promotion thing, so that's how that sort of got underway.
And it wasn't only really business houses, it was also people that Kenneth knew that would be, you know, enjoy to be a part of it, because we probably realised even at that time, or certainly Kenneth would have, that this was going to be a big thing, and that we were going to have people. As far as it went, as committees went, there were a lot of subcommittees that didn't, and maybe one of the representatives of the subcommittee would come to the main meeting to say what had happened with them, a report back with them, because there were so many. When we looked at it, Kenneth and I really looked yesterday, had a good look. I mean, it was amazing how many things were done over those festivals. So, yes, so, you know, to get that all under one umbrella was really probably the biggest thing to do, and to make sure that also that people did what they said they would do, really, is what it boils down to.
And when it was first motored, probably going back a fraction, about doing a festival, and we had no money, nothing. So I went to Barry O'Keefe, who was mayor, and I sat in his office and sort of said, you know, what had happened. And he looked at me, you know, and said, oh yes. And I said, this is going to be bigger than Ben-Hur once we get it up and going. And he said, how can I help? I said, well, we have no money. So he pulled out his checkbook and wrote out a check for $500. And there you are. And that gave us stationery to start with, you know. And then we were able to write letters and send out. And Commodore Merson was again with Jose, wasn't it? Jose,
yes. Joe Spencer.
Joe Spencer. They were at the head of that, of organising fundraising. That was their role at that stage. And Red Merson, or Lawrence Merson, went out and went around a lot of the people that he knew, because they were well known in Mosman. Went around a lot of those people in his Navy connections and things. Said, come on, boys, put your money, put your money out. And did all that. And also Admiral Losley, they lived down in Clifton Gardens. They were very supportive too, he and his wife. And so people like that, the contacts, it all started to come. And we got some money to start doing things. And then we sent out invitations and lots of letters and approached business houses. And one of the things that I always said and still say, if you're doing something, you go and see the person. You don't ring up or you ring and make an appointment, but you just ring up and say, hey, look, we're doing this, how about, and going, so a lot of shoe leather, wore out several shoes, and going to all these business houses, banks and shops and real estates and all those people. And on the whole, everyone was very supportive. Some would say, what's it going to do for me? And I said, well, you just wait and see. And I said, you get on the coattails and come along, you'll see what's happening.
And then, of course, Kenneth then decided that we'd have the social committee. We can move on to that probably. Yeah. And because they were for fun, that was for fundraising.
Fundraising, yes.
And Kenneth knows more about that than I do, but I know he got together a good working social committee who would take on functions, fashion parades, luncheons, and that sort of thing.
They organised that in like card parties and fashion parades and wine tastings and things like that.
The first opening, the 1981 opening, that was the town hall.
Yes.
That was the town hall, because I get a bit muddled up in when the town hall actually closed for refurbishment. But that was, I remember that very well, and just getting it off the ground. It was very exciting, really, at that time.
Yeah, it was all something very, very new, although a lot of people said, oh, there used to be something like this in Mosman a long time ago. I said, well, this is something very different, Come on board, be part of it, The lady in question was Dame Joan Sutherland. No, she was back here in Australia, and she was still performing. And they were down at Whale Beach, their beach house, and she rang me and sort of said, could I go down and do her hair for something they were doing on whatever night it was. And I said, yeah, of course, she'd come down for lunch. So I went down and did all that, and was doing the hair. And she said, now what's happening? What are you doing? And I said, well, about this Mosman festival. And she again said, do you know what you're doing, dear boy? So I said, well, this is what we've set out. And I said, now I've got a very special favour to ask of you. And she said, oh, yes. And I said, I want you to be patron. And she laughed, a great belly laugh, and she sort of said, well, I won't be here, when you're doing it. And I said, whatever the year, the month was at that stage. And she said, well, I won't be here. I said, that doesn't matter. When you are here, if we can have you at functions and things like that. And she thought about it, she'll get somebody else, And then I said, no, you have to do it for me. And she said, well, I suppose I'm patron of the Vancouver Festival, and I've never been to one of theirs. So I said, right, there you are. When she opened Sutherland Walk.
Oh, yes.
And then we came up from there, and we came to the police station, and we changed into an open Rolls Royce, which I'd requested. And she had all these flowers, all the children, all these wonderful flowers. So we put them on the back of with the hood, that went down. And Joan got in the back and she said, oh, it's also difficult into these cars. I said, come on now, sit down. So we sat down, and I'd requested a police escort. So we had 2 motorcycle cops there. And we got started off one thing, and the next thing they went, boom, they'd gone, and they were way up the end of Military Road, and I said, a lot of use they are. And I told lots of the shop owners that we were doing this drive-through Mosman. They all came out and waved. each time, as I said, you've got to reinvent things, because if you do the same thing, it all becomes very ho-hum. And to reinvent something different each festival, really. Different ideas. What's the aim? What are you going to do? And I said, well, we're going to launch a scholarship in the performing arts. And for somebody who was an opera singer or a violin player or a piano player, something like that, you know. And somebody from the area, if we could possibly do that, or close proximity. And so that's how it started. And then we got that up and going. And again, Dame Joan was here, and I said to her that we were doing this thing, and she said, "What a great thing to do!" And then it was Fiona James, who was an opera singer, or is an opera singer, and now is one of the principals of Opera Australia. So she was the one that won it and performed. So we didn't have a town hall, and we didn't have the cinema at that stage, where we had a concert before. And so I approached the Navy, or it might have been Red that approached the Navy, and we had it down at Platypus in their thing there. Penguin, thank you. And did all that, and Joan came over, and I did her hair, and I think she came to my house from memory. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And we went down, and we drove down in this enormous Daimler, which was one of the Queen's Daimlers. And it was owned by a wonderful man here in Mosman, who I think is long gone. He had 2 of the Queen's Daimlers, and we used them in the parade in some photographs somewhere. Lovely, lovely, lovely limousines. So Joan was picked up in the Queen's Daimler.
Ken was a natural, as far as we thought, as far as the festival was concerned, you know, because he uses bright colours. I mean, I love his stuff. I think it's fun, and after all, the festival has to be fun, otherwise it doesn't work. So Kenneth approached him, and we got the first poster. And of course, ever since then, you know, for that 81, 83, 85, 87, 90 and 93. See, Ken was wonderful because he did that every year. And then, you know, we had the sweatshirts and the T-shirts. And then at one stage there, when Bridgepoint was built, which was 1990, we had up at the top of the escalators there were a few empty shops, and we put a shop in there to sell the things that we had for that year, for 1990. So Ken was very obliging, it was great. It was all his artwork. It was all the artwork that went into it, and scarf, as you saw, and there were all sorts of things. Yeah. But mostly, the big thing was really the T-shirts. There's a blue badge, there's a magnet, and it's the same logo. Yeah. And the key ring. Yeah. Now that wouldn't have been anything to do with Ken. That would have been a separate thing.
That was separate, yeah.
Ken really was doing artwork. You know, artwork on clothing, because that was his big thing at that time as well, of course. Because that last festival was 96 that Erin Hill did, and then of course, as we know from the history of it, 97 was when Kenneth was moving, and we decided that you can't really continue something like that when the principal people are not really doing it anymore. It was better to finish it on a high, I think, which I felt we did. We had various caravans. As we look at the pictures, we seem to find more and more caravans.
Well, Mosman Daily had a caravan.
Yeah, Mosman Daily. And
they gave us that, and then we had, I think,
there was one with there's pictures of in the school grounds, which I think must have been something to do with the council, because I don't imagine it would particularly be in school grounds if it wasn't something to do with the council. I can't remember that. We had one of our people who worked very hard on the committee, Robin. In her company, they had a caravan, and that was the one that was up at Myaga Road. Because by then, I'm pretty sure that the square wasn't in existence then. So we would have had it on the footpath up there where the road is. And then we can see them all over the place. There was one at Balmoral, and then there was one at the Oval, and that I noticed that had a lot of the T-shirts and everything in them. So, and also Miles Felster, of course, was very interested in vintage cars. So he was also to do with one of the bands, the Scots bands. He was also involved in, and it started at down at Rawson Park. And in those days, my parents were still in a house in Cross Street there, and we used the house. We used the house there, and I can see my mother sitting on the swing seat on the house, watching everything happening. And started there. He assembled it all there. And my sister Jo Spencer, she was my sister. She was very involved, and then they slowly wended their way into Military Road and down. And in those days, it would have been into Myaga Road.
Yes,
Must have been,
yes.
And it was good.
That was when we were laughing yesterday, talking Myaga Road. One of the, it was the first, no, it must have been the second or third Grand Parade. And Miles was good doing that. It was his baby to do that. And so many people came on board, and the Navy band, and we had the Army band, the pipe band, and we had the City of Sydney band at one stage, and the City of Sydney town crier. He preceded the thing in all his gear, which was fantastic. They were big things, you know. And the Army duck thing, they had soldiers in it, and the schools. And I thought this was a great idea to have something a bit different, so I rang RAAF base at Richmond. And I said to them, and the guy said, "Oh yeah, what are you on about?" You know, so all that. I said, "We want to fly past." And he said, "What?" And I said, "A fly past." I said, "We're doing this festival in Mosman, and we are the first municipality within the City of Sydney to hold a festival." And we were. And he said, "Leave it with me, mate, and I'll get back to you." So anyway, a day or so later, the phone rang, and it was Flight Sergeant, whoever he was. And yeah, we're taking us on board. We've got 4 F-111s here. And so I said, "Fantastic, and what day is it?" And I said, "Saturday." And it starts at whatever time it was, 11 o'clock or something, wasn't it? It started the parade. And he said, "We'll muster over Sydney." And right on cue, the parade was coming up Military Road. These 4 F-111s screamed up Military Road, very low. You know, they were gone like that. And he said, "Where does it terminate?" We said, "Myaga." He said, "Right, got on the map. We turned left at Myaga Road." So you can imagine, had the road map out. That was a lot of fun, but it was great. You know, everyone was craning their necks at these things, and then the parade went on. But the parades were great. They were good, and you then got a lot of people on board, a lot of people who had floats and things like that, you know. And the zoo came on board with some ideas and things like that. One stage I spoke to somebody, what was the name we tried to think of yesterday?
Dale.
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 She was public relations there. I spoke to her. She was a great buddy, and went to her and sort of said about this, and that I'd spoken to somebody else, and he said, "That'd be fantastic. We'll get the elephant out on a float, and we'll get the giraffes, and we'll do this." And she said, "What?" And I said, "Well, one of your co-buddies sort of suggested have the elephant on a float coming up Military Road." I said, "Soldiers spray water everywhere." That didn't happen, of course.
It didn't happen.
And we had, we did have an open day thing at the zoo, didn't
Yes.
we? And we had a bands down there on their stage and things. So they got involved, which was good. And very supportive.
We had the freedom of Mosman as well. We had that, of course.
We had several of those.
Yes.
We had the Army and the Navy.
We had the Navy, yes, I remember the Navy particularly.
From Middle Harbour Yacht Club, took a bit of grinding into the water to get them to do it. What are you on about? So anyway, eventually we got quite a lot of boats together, and with flags and banners and decorated. And they came from around there, around to the island at Balmoral, and where we had the band. We had a band there, I think.
Oh yes, we had. That was actually, they looked
Navy
wonderful,
band,
the boats
they
really.
looked fabulous.
There weren't many, because we were sailors, you see, so it was through the cruising division of Middle Harbour Yacht Club. But there weren't many of us. There were probably about 15 maybe boats. But when they came round that headland, it looked so great because they had all the flags up. We did it in daylight, of course, so that they could be seen. And then all the things then started to go on in the rotunda. Now this was when my sister was very involved, was when Joe was doing it.
Yeah.
And I loved it because she had the music "We Are Sailing," and really the goosebumps, I can't tell you, with the boats coming along and the flags and the "We Are Sailing." It was so exciting, it really was. And then they came round into past the island, between the island and where the baths are, and I don't think you could do it anymore, but we had our anchors down there, and a whole lot of us were there. And then the fireworks, of course, at that time came from the island.
Yeah.
So we were in amongst all the fireworks, and then we got permission, I don't know how, to let off our rockets. You know, we have distress rockets when we're out at sea. And so we did get permission to do it, though, because you do have to get permission. And there were these rockets flying all up from all the boats in Balmoral. I don't think Balmoral's ever seen anything like
Quite like it, no.
And then still talking fireworks, by 87, the town hall, we couldn't get the town hall, and they had the bright idea, Kenneth and there was another man called Philip, of using the roof of the Balmoral Baths roof, because that hadn't been refurbished by then. That hadn't been done. And so they called it Raffles, and it was all very Indian and mysterious, and I think there were people with baskets pretending snakes were coming out, all that sort of thing. And the fireworks were very good. They had it on the... When I look back on it, they must have had it on the back of the bars.
On the bars,
and they had Festival of Mosman. So Mosman Festival, whatever it was, they said. Festival of Mosman, I think it was. And that all came, and that was a wonderful night. It was supposed to be like, you know, the Raj in Singapore.
A beautiful night, and the Navy band were playing, and also we had the Navy chaplain there, and occasionally they do the ceremony of blessing the flag. And they did this, which was lovely. They had the drums and things there, and the naval flag over it. And he said a few words and sprinkled water over it and blessed the flag, which was lovely. It was a nice little change, you know, from everything else. And the Navy played on, and we partied on. And then we had a reception down at Ashton Park in the old hall there before it was anything like it is today. And Dame Joan came to that. And they had no power or anything like that, and it was very rickety, and we couldn't do this and you couldn't do that. Anyway, we got a generator from somebody or other, and it was planted way down in the trees, so it wasn't caught too much nonsense. And we had lights, because it was late in the afternoon, twilight. And Dame Joan arrived in her limousine, Rolls Royce, and we had flares all the way down the path. And we had a piper, and she was piped in, because she was a great Scottish lady, you know. Piped in, which was wonderful, and we had this wonderful reception there, and it was beautiful looking back to the city, which was a great view from there.
We had a funny thing happen with that, because Kenneth and I went down there to speak to the caretaker, and you know, we were just saying we wanted to have this, and he turned around and he said, "Well, you can't dance." And I said, "Well, I don't really think we wanted to dance." And he said, "Oh no, you can't dance because the floor won't hold you."
How many people are you having? And you know, back in those days, it was all what we were doing was a bit way out there, I suppose, to a lot of these people, you know. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. And also, just talking of venues, Scots Kirk, of course, which we were talking about, we used Chalwyn Castle. And we had two piano recitals there with John Champ. And then we had, I think it was a year after, another year, we had Nigel Nettheim, who was a pianist. And they were very popular, weren't they? We tried to, did we organise a ferry? I think we did organise a ferry to take people around to Chalwyn.
Because it was a terrible place to park.
To park, that was the thing, parking, yeah. So yes, they did. A lot of people arrived on a ferry. And we had supper there afterwards out on the terrace.
Yes, it was lovely.
Which was very nice. That was great.
Yes, down on the tennis court.
Yes.
Where the tennis court was, down we had supper down there, I remember that.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yes, we had a window decorating throughout the municipality, you know, which was great. And a lot of the shops came on board and did that, you know. And a lot of them, you know, with a poster as a stage set, I suppose you'd call it, and then go from there with everything, you know. What are we going to do? And I said, well, it's up to you. You know, you're the shop owner. You've got stock and do things with them. And they did, which was great. Yeah. And we had was Howard Craven.
Howard Craven, and in those days 2UE, I think.
Yeah.
2CH.
He lived in Mosman, and he did that. And we had great personalities like Bob Rogers, Steve Liebman. Who judged one of the sandcastle competitions, and Bob Rogers did several things, being a local, and then we also did, talking of him, he came on board, literally, we did a ferry trip from here to the Opera House to a cocktail party launch at the Opera House, which Dame Joan came to. And that was some of, I think it was Ken Doan's work was there, hung there. A wonderful, a lady called Sandy DeBar, she's still in Mosman. She had she was an artist, and she had a furniture shop in Avenue Road. And I think she had one somewhere else in Cachet, it might have been Cachet somewhere. Yeah. And she did, I asked her when we were doing one of the big concerts in the town hall, if she would do a backdrop for me of Dame Joan. And I gave her a photo I had of Joan, and she said, oh, yes, I think it's a mighty thing to ask. Well, it's got to be a backdrop. And large, to hang down the back of the screen, the stage. And she did it on calico, got a great thing of calico. And she did this thing, and you have it, the council have it. And it's done in charcoal. And we did this, and her shop is quite close to me, a couple of shops away. Anyway, Dame Joan was coming in to have her hair done in Avenue Road in those days. And I said to her, I've got a special. Oh, yes, she said. I said, this has been done if you would like to sign it. So we unravelled it. She said, my God, it goes like the red carpet. And it's very long, huge thing, and quite wide. And it is really very, very good. That was so good. That was in the town hall. And a friend of mine who worked with me, he knew people in Les Girls. And he said, leave it with me. I said, okay, that sounds fun. And I said, but now we've got to be very careful, because I said, people can get a little bit embarrassed, I suppose. Thank you, is probably the word. And I said, okay, because they were fantastic group. And a lot of glitter and feathers and things. I said, so long as they do not bare their chests, you see, or their bosoms and things. No, they won't do it. So what did they do? Came on and all came off, feathers and glitter and high kicks and things like that. It was wonderful. It brought the house down.
Yeah.
It
we
really
were
was.
terribly nervous.
We'd been run out of town. And then next thing we had the police coming around and saying, what are you doing?
They had a glitter ball up there, with all the lights going on it, and then they did it so well. I mean, I adored the Le Cage-Fort musical. Yeah. So for me, I couldn't be better than that music, and they did it so well. Everybody enjoyed it. I'll never forget Barry. He thought it was absolutely wonderful.
The cast enjoyed it so much, and Barry was cheering and carrying on, and because he had the mayoral chain on. And at the end of it all, I can't think of the name of the lead of the Le Cage at that stage, can't think. Anyway, came down off stage one thing, mixed with everybody with all their feathers and things like that. And he said to Barry, he said, I love your chain, it's fantastic. He said, I've got the earrings, but my wife won't let me wear them. It was hysterical. So then we were all invited up to the mayoral chamber upstairs for drinks, the whole cast. It was a lot of fun. It was the kids' night out was the first one, and Sue Blakeney, who was in charge, she was called herself the fairy odd mother. And her daughter, or somebody else she had, was the good fairy, and we had all these kids sitting in and she was there reading things to them. Kids were crying and jumping up and down. The parents were leaving them and then going on to the art show. And there were millions of them. It was like a horde of ants coming in. And we tried to keep them, we had, round the hall, we had schools and their age groups, so as they would assemble at these things. Well, that went by the board. And these kids, they came in all in their party dresses and things. And of course, it was great for the parents because they were having a night out and we were the babysitters. And we had pizzas and things supplied for the kids to eat. And at that stage, we had in the town hall, to decorate and bring it down a bit, we had parachutes. We got these wonderful parachutes from the Air Force, and we had them slung up, and they were right up. And then we had fairy lights inside them, so it looked very decorative, it looked wonderful. They covered the entire thing, ceiling. So anyway, all this got underway, and Diane and I went off to the Clowny Art Show, did all that, and got back. And by the time we got back, they were disbanding, and what had happened, the parents were to come for their children, and they were to go out in lots, and school lots or whatever like that. So anyway, it all got a bit out of hand because kids were chumming up with other kids. Oh, I want to go so-and-so. No, you can't, you know. And I mean, the queue was from the Old Town Hall right down the street, down here, you know. It was enormous. The parents for these kids getting rid of them, you know, and getting their children, where's little Bobby so-and-so? They were in the toilet, trying to get out the toilet window. And this friend of mine, Duncan Stewart, who was the master of ceremonies, was in tails and with all these kids, and he said it was an absolute eye-opener, these kids. He said, I had no idea they had so much energy and thoughts of escape trying to get out. We had to lock the doors. I said they probably wouldn't be able to do it today because of fire regulations, because they wanted to get out in the street. And so they're all in there, so the doors were locked. And then the pizzas came, and I think there were rock cakes and all this sort of thing. Well, then they started throwing them. And they were like frisbees up into the parachutes and on the floor and jumping on them and skating. Well, you can imagine the town hall. We had buskers, because I remember myself approaching two somewhere in Sydney at something. I thought they were fantastic and gave them the dates, and they came and they busked, you know, and did that. And we had those in the Grand Parade. We had those things on stilts, you know, that I found from somewhere or other. They came. It was a lot of fun, yeah. And again, it presented something different each time. We introduced later on food and wine down at Balmoral, which was on the off year, again to sort of keep the festival alive in something different. And they were very successful with food stalls all along the Esplanade. And it then brought in all the restaurants and food shops and food outlets to give them a go, you know, promotion thing. And a lot of them came on board with that, which was fantastic. They were very successful. And of course now I think Mudgee does it. I used to say to them, you know, well, if you're going to do something in the festival, have a dinner and have a jazz pianist or somebody playing a piano or a trumpet or something like that as a bit of fun, which happened. And then we did, going on from that, we did the art crawl rather than a pub crawl. We did this art crawl, which was a great thing. And I think we had a government bus, then we had small school buses, and pick up at Balmoral, people could park their cars there, and then get on a bus and go. We did quite a few little art galleries. So they all did things with wine and cheese and biscuits and things like that, and people playing on various things, flutes and God knows what. Did all that, and that was a lot of fun too. I've written down names here of people like Dees Giles, who's one of the first instigators in the festival committee. He was fantastic, again with his contacts and things. And another chappie called David Robertson, who had a coffee shop here. He was great. It was up opposite where Mosmania was. It was opposite in their little driveway down there in the back. They were good, and he was very supportive, very helpful. And Miles, of course, another guy called Lindsay Bennett, who was the helper. Louise Cullen, who did the sandcastle. And Susie Barnes, who I asked her to be my hostess. And there's a photograph of she and I and the Mersons at one of the openings. And she was a very gracious lady and did all that. And Sue Blakeney, Robin Bayliss, who was with the first caravan and did the gold whales for us. And then we had the Festivals Social Committee, which was headed by Sylvia Merson, who was a great client of mine. And they were very supportive, and she got together Belinda Mutton, Betty Main, and Kath Henderson, whose husband was a retired Army colonel, and he and Red sort of got together with one of the first parades about the Army and the Navy, you see, so that was good. And a lady called Joy Purcell, who had Boutique Elegante up where the cinema is there. She was very kind, and she gave me a few of her shop mannequins for the first opera costumes.
So was that along Spit Road?
Yeah, she was in the cinema building. Yeah, she was there for years. There are people like that, and Decor Glass, who gave us the gold whale that we presented to Dame Joan. She gave us that, which was wonderful. Mosman Design Shop, Anna Marie Williams. And it still is on the corner there, opposite the which was then the old Mosman Hotel. Mosman Design Shop, Lilac Bush, which was very supportive. They gave us lots of things. Jeff Churcher at Beach's Restaurant, Queen's School, Miss Medway, of course, and Mrs. Sands, I mentioned about the badges, and a man called Oscar Finstra, who, what did he do? But he helped us in the beginning. He helped us tremendously.
I thought he was something to do with the kitchen shop.
He was great. So all those people were just fantastic helpers, and they knew other people, so other people came on board and did all that. So it rolled on, you know. National Australia Day Committee of Citizen of the Year, 1982, which was a great surprise. I remember Max Clark, I think it was, ringing me and saying about this, and it was very hush-hush, don't tell anybody. It was like getting an order from the Queen, you know, don't say it comes out. And then it came up, which was a great honour. And I said, well, I'm very honoured, but I said, really, it's it's the committee that have done all this, helped, and God. And he said, no, without you at the helm, it wouldn't have happened. And I said, no. So here it is, here with the seal of the common seal of the Council of Mosman. 23rd day of February, 1982.
And the council, you know, were very supportive of us, which was wonderful. I mean, you can't do anything like that without having the council behind you, because it's so very important that they are, as you would say, on board as well, because they were just great. And that made a big difference as far as the festival was concerned, because, you know, we could, and particularly Kenneth, could go and speak to them about things and discuss different situations.
And I hope people enjoy us in the future. Mosman Festival, and may it long survive and carry on, although in a different form today as to when we did it. But carry on.